Join the Brew Crew. You might be our next winner. Text BREW to 30218 for your chance to win from 1240 The Brew. 1240 KOKL, Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
SJ, welcome to Muskogee Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkidos, Stongo. Welcome to Muskogee Radio, weekly magazine of things that are important to the Muskogee people and other Native Americans, plus our community. We have a couple of things we'll be sharing with you today. First of all, we have Aaron Salzman and from our Social Services program, and Andy Proctor from the Citizenship Office. I'll be talking about some of the help and aid and assistance they have been providing to victims of the hurricanes down south of us. Also, in the second half of our program, we have a Will Sampson film retrospective going on up in Tulsa. We have the honor of his daughter, Andra Freeman, and the coordinator, Ben Ardondo, will be joining us in the second half of our show. So we ought to have a lot of good stuff to share. But first of all, our sidewalk superintendent report. The council house is wet. It's raining today, so all the work's being done inside, so I'm really anxious to see what kind of changes. So if you're out there and want to check it out, it's wet. Okay, getting on past the silliness here, let's talk with Aaron and Andy. Welcome. We appreciate you all making time for us this morning.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
We have been trying to stay on top of the devastation that's been occurring down in Texas and Florida and the southern regions of our nation along the Gulf of Mexico, who've been hammered by hurricanes in recent weeks. We spoke with first responders from the emergency response team and got an idea of the part they played. But one of the very important segments of the assistance going down there has been from Social Services and the Citizenship Office, who have been aiding those folks down there with all kinds of legal papers and things that they may need to get some benefits and some help in recovery. So first of all, Aaron, let me start with you real quick. A real quick capsule of social services and the specific department that you're working with.
As you mentioned, I am the program manager at Social Services. I'm housed here in Okmulgee. However, we have three offices that encompass social services. We have a Southern Regional Office in Wetumpka. We have the office here in Okmulgee, and then we also have a satellite office in Jinx. We run 13 different programs under our social services department, and we serve citizens in state and also citizens out of state on some of our different programs.
Now, those would run a gamut, I would imagine, of different needs that those folks have, like what educational benefits, or is that strictly education?
We don't actually have any educational programs. Ours
Okay.
is mostly assistance programs.
All right, so that might be money to help them kind of get back on their feet and that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly.
All right, now, Andy, let me ask you for the same thing, a quick capsule of the Citizenship Office here.
Right, so we actually have two offices, one here in Okmulgee, the other is housed in Jinx. I'm currently the manager for the Jinx office. What we do is we basically are the front door into the tribe, so to speak. Whenever you first come to enroll, you come see us, provide us your documentation, and then we issue a roll number and a card. And we provide other verification services for the citizens, but on the backside, we also work with different departments such as social services, school clothing, natural disaster to provide any type of numbers documentation or any type of verification that they might need as
So
well.
you truly are then the front door there. Without that material, then folks wouldn't qualify for anything else.
Right, yeah, you'd have to come see us first.
Okay. Have been a lot of people been wanting to gain gosh, I can't even speak this way. Citizenship. I mean, have the numbers grown lately that you could tell?
You know, we kind of go through spurts. We have our seasons where we'll be really busy, and then we'll be not so busy. But overall, this year we've had a good enrollment year. We pulled numbers for our last board meeting. In 2 months, we enrolled over 800 citizens. So we were definitely going through a big spurt there, and that was just a couple of weeks ago. So we may be over the 1,000 citizen mark by now.
Well, we're talking numbers there. Then what do you have a total in for Creek citizenship?
The total right now, as of this morning, is 84,011
Wow.
total enrollment.
Now, last time I looked, it was hovering around 80, so you've been really busy.
Right.
Okay, well, we are very interested in the kind of things that you've been working with, Aaron. What sorts of assistance have you been able to supply those folks who've been caught down there in the weather?
I would say the main thing that a lot of our citizens that are in the hurricane affected areas are mainly concerned with getting clothing assistance, personal hygiene assistance, and food assistance. I would say those are the highest volume services that we've been offering under our natural disaster program.
Now, is this in the form of sending a truck down loaded with food, or do you give them vouchers or send them a check or something?
We have found the most beneficial thing, the most beneficial process for the clients that we have is just a paper check. That's what has worked the best. A lot of them are not actually in their homes, so we're trying to get this to wherever they're at, mail the check to them, the paper check to them. And we had a little bit, in the beginning, we considered Visa gift cards, but we had a little bit of a issue with how we were going to do that with the fees associated with the gift cards. So by visiting with our staff and visiting with the clients, we have determined that the best way to go about this was to do the paper check. So that's what we've been doing.
So this is assistance you're sending to folks who've been pretty much flooded out of their homes, totally lost whatever they had, or significant portion of such?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've encountered a lot of citizens that have lost everything. It's more of just, and we anticipated that being the case, but it hasn't been. It's been more of they're displaced from their home for the time being, and they just need a little bit of a hand up to kind of help them get through until they're able to get back into their home.
So they could use this money for things like a motel room or...
Yes, we do.
Food.
Yes, we offer shelter expense if they need that. If they're needing to be in a hotel, we can get them through for however many days they need to be there until they're able to return to their home.
So when someone comes to the tribe for assistance, they're going to have to provide all kinds of documentation and this sort of thing. That's correct?
Yes, there are required documents that they will need to provide in order for us to assist them.
And that's kind of where Andy's office comes in, right?
Yeah, it's been a team effort from the beginning. For social services, working with citizenship, we met. Right off the bat, as soon as we found out that this had taken place, I think Monday morning we came in and we were all together, meeting, talking about numbers. Jason Walls, Nate Wilson, me, myself, Andy, Denise Hanawa, Nina Tiger, we sat down for a few hours on Monday morning, and Citizenship was able to pull maps and look at the areas that were declared state disaster areas as well as federal disaster areas. And then they were able to look at their numbers in their citizenship database and tell us how many citizens were actually living in those areas that were declared disaster areas.
Okay, Andy, what kind of requests are you seeing there? Is there any particular document that people are needing, asking for more than anything else?
As far as from our office, or
Yeah.
really to get enrolled into the tribe, it comes down, they're needing their birth certificates. But as to follow up on Aaron's point, we really worked with them as far as pulling those numbers, and it was a lot of looking at maps, like she was saying, and building maps and GIS software and pulling where the projected route of the hurricane was going, and then following up with it every 3 or 4 days to see where it had gone, to maybe this area was more impacted than the other, maybe this one wasn't. And during that, for the Texas hurricane, we identified 606 potential citizens to be affected in those 18 counties that were federal disaster areas.
That's a lot of creeks there.
Mm-hmm.
Were they looking to replace like membership cards or some other form of ID or anything like that?
For those, yeah, they were definitely looking to replace the card, but at the same time, we wanted to make the process of going through this natural disaster as easy as possible. So we were able to just verify over the phone with the natural disaster program, hey, the citizens enrolled, whatever documentation that they have, if you could send us a copy of it, just to keep on our records that this is who came to the natural disaster program, stating who they were, and everything, just to help the people get back on their feet and make it just that much more easier for them.
Now, Aaron had mentioned the figure 600 and something identified in the area. Is that right?
Yes, that's what we identified. That's for the Texas hurricane.
Right, and how many of those folks came to you guys for help? Any feel? Ballpark is good.
We were thinking around 30 or 40. Some of the individuals don't really identify, that they're going through a situation. They just say, I just need a replacement card, mm-hmm. or they'll actually mail in for the replacement card without stating, a reason or anything. And in that case, that's where we kind of lose track of the numbers as far as, well, maybe they came in, maybe they didn't, type of situation.
Aaron, is it hard to kind of track these things down? I mean, do you follow up on basic information from Andy's office in finding these people and some sort of location where to mail a check for assistance?
We definitely have worked with them throughout this whole process whenever we've needed information, even stuff like that. However, we had visited, myself and you visited prior to this, and I had told you that in the beginning of this, we designated one worker to take care of all our natural disaster cases that were coming through in the wake of these hurricanes. And so she's been really great at working with the clients to pinpoint where they are and get their assistance to them, whether they're staying with a friend or at a hotel. She's been great with working with them to get, a mailing address or locate them or locate somewhere where they can pick up their check. So, yeah.
Were you sending any checks to like the football stadium or something like that?
No, I don't think we would allow that. Okay. I mean, we've been pretty well, we check up on things to make sure it's a legitimate address, and we have been sending the checks certified so we get a signature that they were received by the client for our files. And so she's been really well about checking up on making sure that the assistance is actually getting to where it needs to be going into the hands of the citizens.
It must make you kind of feel good to know that the work you're doing is actually benefiting someone who's really in need.
Yeah, we're really, really happy to be a part of assisting these creek citizens that are in these disaster areas. And it's been all across the board, it's been really good. I mean, the team effort, we have a really good working relationship with Citizenship. as well as James Nichols in emergency management, and then Jabon Gouge. He actually sat in on our meetings as well. He's been, a mouthpiece for getting this out there to the clients.
Right
That
now,
this assistance is available.
yeah, Jabon is the new liaison for out-of-district citizens now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Do you, either of you have recall any particular case that really stuck out in your mind as someone really in bad shape, or a great outcome from what you've been able to do for them? I mean, anything that you're particularly proud of, or something that was particularly difficult?
We did have a difficult case that we're actually still in the process of trying to sort out, but we had an individual that was had went down to Houston and had been down there for a few weeks and had been staying with his grandmother-in-law. So he didn't actually have an established address in the Houston area at the time. And he went down there to work as a day laborer, and at the time was, like I said, was staying with his grandmother-in-law, and then was staying in and out of hotels. So when this hit, he was actually in a hotel, him and his wife. And they lost they were evacuated from the hotel and evacuated to a shelter. And so the first thing that we have to establish when we go to assist somebody is a residence verification that they were actually staying there. So this has been a little bit of a difficult case with his specific situation because he was kind of all over the place, but we've been working diligently to cover all our bases and try to find proper documentation to show that he was living down there. And so we got some new information yesterday, and myself and my director, Denise Hanawa, met yesterday afternoon and looked over all the documentation that he was able to provide to us, and we were able to establish that he did actually have a residence down there. And so we actually have the documentation now to back it up so we can legitimately move forward with assisting him. So I think that was a good outcome for him, particularly because for a minute we didn't know if we were going to be able to help him. And it was unfortunate.
Well, let's explore that for a second. First of all, Andy, if someone has lost all their documents and things and can't prove, so to speak, their citizenship or eligibility for assistance, what can you do to help them there?
So our office, we can do a lot of research. We have access to online databases that help us in return help the citizens or applicants. Maybe they're missing one piece of documentation, and we can find that documentation. And we can just pull that without having the citizen or applicant go searching for whatever it is that is needed. In a special circumstance like the hurricane situation, really it was, just anything, if it was they went to federal aid, is it the Red Cross? Have you applied with FEMA, a bill with your name and address on it, anything like that. And in a special circumstance, we have to take into account that some of these people, they may have lost everything, and they literally have no documentation of, to prove their identity. So we have to be mindful of that, and also be there to help them whenever they do come for help. So we were looking just at any and every avenue of what we could do to help prove these people are who they say they are.
Have either of you had to deal with people who were, now let's use the word fakes, who were just trying to get on and get free help without having to prove, without having proved they were actually Muskogee citizens? People just trying to jump on the bandwagon.
We actually get that a lot, and it's more of people claiming there's somebody else besides who they really are, and that's why we ask for IDs, socials, a lot of documentation now, birth certificates, which that was required before, but People just coming in and trying to fraud their way into being Muskogee Creek, sending in fake IDs. Our office, we catch those now through some of our training with Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection. We're able to identify, that ID is fake. We know what to look for on there. We know how to watch people, how they act while they're in the office. Are they up to something shady? Are they just having a rough time? Those types of situations. But we definitely get that a lot in our office, of people just trying to say they're somebody else. It's
And then get the benefits. Like they say, okay, how much do I get?
right.
Or how is this an ATM card? Can I?
Right. We get those questions a lot too.
Yeah, if they actually knew what it was like to be Indian, they may have to change their mind a little bit. Not the easiest thing in the world sometimes. Now, Aaron, excuse me, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Have you had the same situation where, I guess, fakes and frauds were trying to weasel their way in?
I think kind of like Andy just said, yeah, we deal with that on a normal basis across the whole social services department. As far as particularly with our recent hurricane natural disaster assistance, I can't think of any particular cases where anyone has came in, trying to fraud our program. The case that I just mentioned to you about the gentleman trying to establish residence down there, I mean, of course, that's a thought that has crossed my mind, as people that may try to, say they were living down there when they really weren't. And it wasn't a matter of that with this particular case that we talked about. However, I mean, we really did feel he was living down there, but in order to show that we followed our policies and procedures, we had to have something showing that he was for sure living down there. Mm-hmm. So we were able to finally get that after working with him for...
And without this material, neither one of you can process them further, so you have to turn them down then.
Yeah, we would have to deny them, because otherwise, I mean, we can't show that we followed.
Yeah, and then you got to answer a lot of questions to your bosses.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Now, if someone was interested in obtaining more information or about helping someone down there, they have a cousin or an uncle or an aunt or somebody who lives down there and doesn't know about it, where would they contact you? A phone number or a computer address? Aaron?
All of our hurricane assistance, natural disaster assistance has been streamlined through the Okmulgee office. Iris G is the worker that has been assigned to take care of all these. Her direct supervisor is Daniel Carlock. Both of those individuals are in the Okmulgee office and can be reached at 918-549-2445. And then if you go to the main Creek Nation website and click on Human Services, you can find the Social Services link on that page, and that will have our main application for services that can be filled out and faxed in, emailed in, texted in, however you need to get it into us. But yes, myself, I'm in the Okmulgee office, Daniel and Iris are all three there, and our number is 918-549-2445.
Okay, and Andy, if someone wanted to contact your office?
Yeah, so if you need to contact us, our Okmulgee office phone number is 918-732-7941, and the Jinx office is 918-701-2611. We also have an email address of citizenship@mcn-citizenship.com. And just like Aaron was saying, all of our forms are available online under the Independent Agencies tab. And you can fill those out online, print them off, and mail them to our office if you need to.
Okay, and no fakes need apply.
We
want to thank you both for coming in and sharing this information. We knew the firefighters and police were down there, but it's nice to know that there's some backup also in the stuff where it really counts down there and helping people get back on their feet. All right, we're going to take a short pause here. You're listening to Muskogee Radio here on 1240 The Brew. I'm Gary Fife. Please stay with us.
we bless you.
Like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
I just got kicked out of my house.
My girlfriend just broke up with me.
I'm worried I might hurt myself. I feel so alone. Are you there?
I'm here. Here for you anytime, anywhere, 24/7. If you need help or know someone who needs help, please text CREEK to 741-741 from anywhere in the U.S. anytime about any type of crisis. A live trained crisis counselor will receive the text and respond quickly. No judging, just support during any type of crisis. Just text CREEK to 741-741. When suicidal behaviors are detected early, lives can be saved. Get free support at your fingertips 24/7 from the National Crisis Text Line. Help is available for anyone, anytime, anywhere. For more information about the prevention of suicide, or if you or someone you know needs help, please text the word CREEK to 741-741. This message is brought to you by Muskogee Creek Nation Behavioral Health. Help support suicide prevention.
Welcome back to Muskogee Radio. Gary Fife here. Joining me in the studio is Andra Freeman. She is the daughter of the late Will Sampson, our beloved Muskogee actor. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate you trucking down from Tulsa to join me here this morning.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, the event there is at the Tulsa American Film Festival, running October 11th through 15th. Screenings of 3 of the most well-known movies that your father, the late Will Sampson, was part of. That includes The Outlaw Josie Wales, where he played Ten Bears, the Comanche chief. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he played Chief Bromden. And Poltergeist 2, where he was the native healer and medicine man, right?
Right.
Okay. All 3 of those movies are pretty well known. Of the 3, I think The Outlaw Josie Wales had the most Native American presence in it, between your father and Chief Dan George, who practically stole that movie from Clint Eastwood.
Right.
People know those movies. I mean, of course, Eastwood's Draw was quite the thing too. Do you have a favorite? Or is there another film in his filmography that is your favorite?
No, Josie Wales is probably, out of all of them, is my favorite because of Dad and Chief Dan George. But some of the little things that that I've heard about it, like whenever they come across the hunting party and Clint Eastwood goes to approach them, they start riding off faster. Whenever they started riding off, some of the guys fell off the horses and were running after the horses and afterwards, and they told them, if I'm going to cut, if you fall off, just lay on the ground. So in the movie, you can kind of see some of those horses don't have riders on them. Little things like that.
Oh, yeah, I've heard a few of those stories, like people getting chased up a tree by buffaloes during dances with wolves, and things like that. Somebody coming out in the middle, and his war cry was "Yate," things like that. Now, you have more family than you.
I am the eldest daughter, but there were 2 boys older than I, and then 7 of us younger than I am. So I had older brother James, Tim, he's in Portland, me, son Shirley, Sonny, my full sister Pogie, and then he started over again with the younger crew. There's Lance, Summer, Samsoji, and Miko.
Prolific man. Now, let's switch a bit to the festival here now. What does it feel like to have your father honored in such a fashion here, practically where his home is?
Well, we'll start with, in June was 30 years since he passed away.
30, gosh.
I know, and today would have marked his 84th birthday. So for him to have passed away at 53 and them still honoring or remembering or an influence that he has on some of the young actors still yet, artists, you see people, his pictures popping up everywhere, different artists and everything. I think it's, I don't know, it's kind of humbling and touches me that people still remember him like, even after 30 years. Some of these people, these artists are kids or were kids whenever he passed away. And, you know, and he still has that influence over him.
Did you notice Will Sampson Road on your way down?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to remind
Yeah, I've been
folks.
down there many times.
Okay. The impact he made was really tremendous. He and a couple of others, the late Dan George and Graham Greene, and maybe some of the women, Irene Bedard, and a couple of have really made an impact on the industry. I've had people, you know, just chatting with me, you know, about movies, you know, just kind of having fun with it, and they will mention The Outlaw Josie Wells, and then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where your father really said nothing. He had one line, juicy fruits. You know, people just have that burned into their memory, and they said that was just such an amazing performance. But that was mostly his presence there, you know, sweeping the floor and kind of watching things going on. And people were so impressed by that, I think, and it just stuck in their minds so well that they mentioned it to me, saying, oh, yeah, he was such an amazing presence in that movie. But that movie itself wasn't, you know, the usual place where you'll see Native people, like in Westerns or, you know, the poverty kind of movies, and, you know, How Bad the Res Is or something like that. He was, of course, an inmate at a mental institution, and as it turns out, was kind of faking it. Through
They thought he was a deaf and dumb Indian, and he. If you read the book, the book was from his point of view, honestly. Of course, the movie was was about R.P. McMurphy, Jack Nicholson's part. But if you read the book as a child, he would try to talk to people, but they wouldn't hear him or wouldn't pay attention to him, so he quit talking. And that's where they, kind of figured, as he grew, that he was a deaf and dumb Indian. Well, when you're like 6'6", and I don't know how they figured, put him in the mental institution that, he'd be okay. But he just, he paid attention to everything that went on. And like I said, whenever R.P. McMurphy and he get sent to, get the electric shock, and the juicy fruit thing comes up, that just explodes. R.P. McMurphy just kind of gets that that kind of look, like, and hands him another piece of gum and everything. He realizes that he was neither deaf nor dumb at that point, and but he tried to get him talk. I think my favorite part of that movie, though, kind of going back from that, is the basketball scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of see some of Dad kind of come out a little bit, when he's, running down back and forth the court and, blocking the shots and, kind of gets this kind of grin on his face. Or the part where he's just walking down there real tall and proud and, puts his hand up in the basket. So, yeah, that's my favorite part, though.
Oh, my. Did he play ball down here by any chance?
I don't know that he did or didn't, but my brothers did. Tim, my older brother, did. He, way back in the 70s, he was ranked in the state, fourth in the state in scoring. But
Do you recall any discussions or memories that your dad had about that movie? Did he ever talk about the part?
Well, not really, except, and this is when going to, they're showing Cuckoo's Nest at Circle Cinema on Monday, which is the 2nd at 6:30. And I'm going to get up and talk. In 1981, I was traveling with Dad, and we went to Salem, Oregon. And that's where, that state hospital there is where they filmed Cuckoo's Nest. So we drove by the state hospital, and, he was talking about the part where the tree was, where McMurphy goes over the fence on the tree and everything. Right, yeah. That was an actual stunt that they designed at that point, but after the movie was over, they cut the tree down, so none of the patients would try to do that. But we drove by the hospital, and I know at one scene you can see cars going by, towards the end, But I was always thought that it was out in the country because, when he's running, through the hills and mountains and everything, it looks like he was out in the country, but it was almost this close to the street, just maybe 30 feet or 40 feet away from the street. And we drove right by the window where that took place. We drove by that little shop that had the TVs and everything where those elderly men were sitting there. We drove past that, past the duck pond, and the friend of his that helped get him into that part, Mel Lambert, we spent the night with him there. But he's also in that too. The fisherman that says, "You're not going fishing on that boat," whenever they steal the boat, that's Dad's friend, Mel Lambert. But I'm going to talk about, that too whenever we get back to, on Monday night at Circle Cinema.
Was it hard for him to get that part, do you recall?
I don't think so. I think his height had a lot to do with it. And, you talk about his presence. Dad had that presence anyway, just because he was so big and everything. He, I think it was 1999, the American Indian Film Festival honored Dad, and it was, I forget which producer or director it was that was there, and he was talking about Dad and the first time that, he was standing there, and Jack Nicholson came in and met him. And, the difference in height there, that Jack Nicholson kind of jumped around and kind of looked at him, kind of like his mouth was all, open and in awe, just like, wow, he was, so I don't know if he, really had difficulty getting the part. And like I said, Mel Lambert was the one that said, "Hey, I know a guy that, be perfect for you." And the rest is history.
Oh, yeah, yes. Juicy fruit, geez. I put that in a column I just wrote about it. The other two films that he's known for, of course, The Outlaw Josie Wales, where he played Ten Bears, the Comanche leader. He fit into it so well. It's like, being an Indian man and knowing the histories and traditions of the warrior presence in tribes across the nation. Did he ever talk about playing that part where him being a Creek was now playing a Plains Indian, Comanche, the Comanche leader too? I guess that would be part of assuming your role as the character. But did he ever mention that one?
I don't recall him ever saying anything like that. But Dad was, yes, he was Muskogee Creek first, and that's what he always said, even back then. Most people said they're Creek, but he said he was Muskogee Creek. Mm-hmm. But he was not just from our people. He was from all nations.
Yes, yes.
He was familiar with all histories, everyone's history, the native history. Whenever when they showed Josie Wales a couple weeks ago, they had a painting there that he had done for Philbrook art competition back in the 50s. And it was a battle of Cochise. And he talks about the history of whenever Cochise, his reasoning behind all the scene, and explained everything. And he was 17 or 18 years old when he painted that. Gosh. And for somebody to have, at that time period, back in the early 50s, to have that knowledge, of what happened with that tribe, is kind of incredible, because we kind of didn't really differentiate, I guess, because of the Hollywood stereotypes, in the 50s and 60s, how everything was. But he was aware of the history there. He knew what was going on at that time. He grew up in that time period.
Mm-hmm. Did he ever deal with the fact that being on screen and being in such prominent films, in a sense, I think you made an allusion to it, that he represented all of us. And that's quite a responsibility and a burden, and also a privilege.
It is.
All at the same time.
It is.
Did he ever talk about the way he felt about doing that kind of thing?
Well, if you ever, anybody that ever knew Dad, he didn't talk a lot about that. He was just, I don't know, it was almost like he was, I don't know, he was just comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. He was just comfortable with it.
Well, how did you feel about that? That same question, you're watching him and knowing that he's sort of carrying the load for all of us in portraying a more authentic character. Did it make you proud? Did you
Yes.
insight?
Yeah, proud and honored, and I don't know, it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's just, yeah,
And we want to thank him for doing that. by the
Yeah.
way. Now, I used to tease a friend of mine, Wes Studi, about the same kind of thing. He portrayed so many native characters. I used to say, well, you portrayed all of our ancestors in the movies there. And did your father feel the same, like going from the Comanche to other tribes and bringing their presence and story across?
I think he tried to bring a certain sense of, like I said, fighting that Hollywood stereotype. He tried to bring certain more dignity to the roles. But he never actually said, this is what I'm going to do. He just went out and did it.
Was there much of a battle for him in the way he portrayed his characters? I've spoken with others who say, well, the stereotypical mentality is still in Hollywood. They still want us to, be in buckskin and feathers, and no matter if you're in the middle of the desert or something else. A racist element also. And then you'd think we'd gone past that, but then you see something stupid like The Ridiculous Six, where they just totally horrified us with what they did there.
In the late, past 78, 79, he did a 5-30-minute program of talk about Hollywood stereotypes. And it was called Images of Indians.
I remember that.
And it was done with, I believe it was PBS that helped do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 30-minute shows, but he went through, different steps of, the things that they fought. There were like 3 costumes, if you will, of you had your Plains Indians, you had your Apaches, and then you had like your generic Indian. They had all of these different elements on your costumes. They were there's another movie thing similar to that, Reels, REEL Indian, that came out not too long ago. They're still fighting the same stereotypes there, which I thought was interesting. The things that he fought about, and, like I said, with the Indians, what everybody's expecting about Indians, we're still doing it. I believe it was Sterling Harjo said that whenever he does a movie, he is not going to have flute music in there. Yeah, but it reminded me that the same things that they're dealing with now, what everybody is expecting an Indian to look like. Another thing that happened whenever they were doing the Images of Indians was they were at some, I don't remember where they were filming, but it was like a gift shop or whatever. And Dad was standing on a porch area, and some lady comes up and says, "Could you excuse me, please? I want to take a picture of the Indian." And it was one of the wooden Indians, they had the war bonnet and everything else. And he's standing there saying, shoot this. And they end up putting it in the program, too, where this is what she wants to shoot, is a picture of the wooden cigar Indian. And here Dad is standing right there, a real, genuine, 100% Indian.
Back in my ancient history, I actually ran into something kind of similar. When I was working in Washington, D.C., there was like the American Indian National Bank had opened. They were having a reception in their big conference room, and there was a stuffed buffalo head on the wall. And this little, excuse me, folks, but this little white lady was walking around wanting to shoot pictures. And at the time, I really wore my hair long. It was almost to my waist. And she said, "Would you go stand there next to that buffalo? You got really long hair and you look like an Indian." And all of a sudden I could feel the fur on the back of my neck standing. I said, "No, why don't you go ahead and shoot the buffalo, ma'am? I'm not interested." We went off and kicked the wall or something like that. But did he ever, is that something he was constantly presented with in working in this industry?
One of his assistants back in the early 80s, of course, it was 87 when he passed, so like I said, it's been such a while, because she saw what his struggle was, the things that he fought for with the natives in there, trying to get parts. She helped start with his blessings, his guidance, is it the American Indian Registry for the Performing Arts?
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, there were still, struggles that he was trying to go through and trying to help, like I said, defeat, but we're still going through that now.
Let me shift over to another movie that we know him from, Poltergeist 2, where he came in and played a spiritual man. And now, for me, that's like really walking on thin ice and taking on Native spirituality with a movie that had absolutely not very much to do with it, but he came across and was a key factor in the way the movie plot moved along.
That one was one of his last movies that he did, and at that point, you could see that he wasn't feeling well. I haven't watched the whole movie because it was hard to watch him, looking at him, knowing how strong he was, and then I could see how much weight he'd lost, and his I could see it in his eyes. But one of the things that happened in that movie that I heard was they had used real bones in there.
Oh, gosh.
And things were happening on the set, so he had to go in and, I don't remember if he cedar or what, but he had to go in and smoke the set because things were happening. There's also the other things that happened that are associated with the movies about the different actors that had died, even the young ones that had passed. Dominique Dunn that played the older sister in the original Poltergeist, she was killed by a boyfriend. The little girl, I forgot what her name was, but she had some kind of lung problem that she ended up dying from. Of course, the older man that played the bad guy, he passed also, and then died. And then, I think there were some others too.
Something I've heard that referred to as the curse of Poltergeist.
Right.
And the bones you mentioned, that was when he was in the swimming pool pit, and these skeletons were supposedly being washed up. And I had heard that they were actual skeletons, and that somebody thought it would be cool to do that, and found out it wasn't. Did the producers of that film acknowledge what they had done and ask your dad for help there?
I don't know if they asked him to do it or if he just took it upon himself to go in and say, hey, this is what the problem is, and just go in and do it himself. So, but I think it's interesting, though, when the first movie came out, I was out there visiting him, and I went down to the video store to check out Poltergeist. He hadn't seen it yet, and of course he had one of those big, taller director's chairs, and he sat in there in that director chair, and we watched the whole movie all the way through. So that was I think that was probably his first exposure to that movie, and then for him to come in and do Poltergeist 2 later on, I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, it was very brave of him to do that. Did he have any control over the way the scenes came out when they portrayed his spiritual activity? It's like, don't do this, don't touch that, or don't bring this on.
Maybe not in the beginning, but I'm sure afterwards he did. After he went in and, like I said, put a blessing for everything, and
Let me ask you a little bit about the Will Sampson that was not on the screen. As a father, with him having to travel, I presume you didn't get as much time as other kids might have with him, or his thoughts on the world, or where we are going, or the place of the Native American in this society.
Well, I was raised mostly by my mother.
Okay.
And but I do remember the times I spent with Dad. He was involved in the American Indian movement. I remember, and at that time I was young, didn't realize what he was doing, but he was always going to, it seemed like Rapid City. Well, I'm going to Rapid City. Okay. I wasn't totally aware of everything that was going on at that point. I met Dennis Banks a few years ago finally, and he said, oh, yes, I remember your dad. He used to be with us in the fight.
Right, yeah, Rapid City used to be ground zero for
Right.
that fight. With Ames, a lot of AIM energy was coming in and going out of that particular town. But his activist activities, are there things besides that he might have mentioned or took part in that you recall?
I don't. He really didn't talk a lot. If you ever knew Dad, he didn't talk a lot. He did things. He just kind of stood back and watched, and he would do his own thing. Nobody could ever talk for him, but he, whenever he wanted to say something, he would. It'd be brief a lot of times, but but he was yes, but he was more like, okay, he just went and did things.
I keep bringing in that one line of Juicy Fruit, but 2 words just made this incredible impact. It's wham, there it is. And he's looking at it, and Juicy Fruit. And I think, my God, he did put it over on those guys. Did he ever talk about that line by any chance?
Like I said, no, he didn't. He just, like I said, that was just, just one thing that he did, whatever. And going back to the influence he had on this younger generation, people are still painting that scene, painting Juicy Fruit, with Dad in there or whatever, or painting that scene where he's there, we're sitting there with Art Pete McMurphy. So so it had 2 words, Juicy Fruit, and had an impact on a lot of people.
How did Native America react to him? I know he traveled to many events and lent his support and that sort of activity, but the common folks, boots on the ground Indian folks, how did they react to when he was around?
Well, for one thing, I think everybody was in awe of him because he was so tall. Yeah. So you had to look up to him. But he, you're talking about common folk. He was common folk too. He could play Hollywood if he had to, but he was more comfortable, I think, with getting back to, with family when he came back to the Okmulgee or whatever. A lot of times you could see him someplace playing pool.
Was he a good shot?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
And lose a few bucks to Will Sampson.
Yeah. But he was more at home, I think. With what you say, common. With Indian people.
I may be wrong here, but I think he came to a meeting of the American Indian Press or Native American Press Association some years back. And there were 2 daughters with him and dressed in Western attire. Would one of those daughters have been you? Early 70s, maybe, something like that.
Maybe late 70s.
Late 70s, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't remember, but could have been. But
Well, I remember, our membership was, just thrilled to have him there, but we were also, as you say, in awe of him. And I guess a lot of my colleagues were almost too shy to go over and talk to him.
I've heard that from people, some very strong people that said that they wanted to say something to, but they're just afraid to.
Well, count me among.
Which reminds me of another story. In summer 1977, we were 5 of his kids, and one of my cousins was out there staying with Dad, and we went to see Star Wars.
Oh,
he took us to see Star Wars. Well, it was showing at that time Grauman's Chinese Theater, and there was a big long line coming out of the theater, and we were back down halfway around the corner on the block, and somebody recognized him. So they took us, and we got to go ahead of everybody, and they eventually seated us in a private box to watch it. But while we were standing out there in the lobby, there was this Asian guy come up to him. Well, Dad was probably 2.5 feet taller than this guy, and he looked like he was probably in his 20s. I was 17, so he looked like he was in his, like I said, early 20s or something. He looks up at Dad, and he says, "Hey, why did you kill Jack Nicholson?" And Dad is, tall enough that he doesn't have to look at the guy, and he's looking off at the distance and says, "I didn't kill him." He said, "Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. You killed Jack Nicholson. You smothered him with a pillow." And Dad just says, "No, I didn't." I was so embarrassed for this little guy. I walked away to get popcorn or something like that. But anyway, he finally left. But you get people that are afraid to approach him, and some that approach him, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that."
Oh God. Now he, when I saw him, I'm pretty sure he was there. He was dressed in Western style, and 2 girls were also dressed Western style. Looked like rodeo princesses. Was that a big part of his life? Did he enjoy spending time ranch style on horseback?
Yeah, he was a bull rider at one time.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
Hats off to those guys.
Yeah, my favorite suit of his was gray, and it had a western cut, and it was specifically made for him, so it fit him well. It was long enough for him. The jacket was long enough for him, and of course, he always had boots on and a cowboy hat, so it made his 6'6" look taller than that.
Oh
so,
gosh, as if he needed it. Oh,
right.
gosh. Well, we're running out of time here, so let me fill people in here real quick. Now there are still 2 films yet to be seen during this festival. One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest at Circle Cinema on Monday, October 2nd at 6:30, and then Poltergeist 2 screening at the Circle Friday the 13th.
Friday the
of all
13th,
days,
yeah.
At 10 p.m. And we'll invite all of you to come up and check out those films. And you will be making an appearance in a talk on which one of these?
During Cuckoo's Nest, and basically tell everybody the little things that I just told you about, the cutting down of the tree of that stunt, and driving by there and seeing the actual hospital where it was filmed and everything.
Okay, well, I hope that a lot of people get a chance to come out and see these films again from this brand new perspective, I'd say, and enjoy them as much as we have.
Tickets are $6 for non-members of Circle Cinema, and they're $8 for non-members.
I remember when they were a quarter.
I do too.
Tamale guy right outside the door. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much, Andra. We appreciate it, and it's just an honor for us to have you join us here today.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Mado. Okay. Well, we actually do have a couple of announcements to read, so we'll knock a couple of those out real quick in a minute or so, about a minute or so, something like that. We got 2. Of course, the mobile flu clinic is still out and around the Creek country, so you might want to check those out. That's starting at the Tribal Complex on the 9th. Rex's Chicken is hiring motivated, dependable individuals for part-time work. If you're interested, 11982 South Memorial in Bixby, and you want to talk to those folks there at 364-3164. Taco dinner at the Springdale Baptist Church, and if you're interested, RSVP by the 8th of October. Let's see, 918-scribble 509. Looks like 585-5902. When's the last time you had an Indian taco out there?
It's been too long.
Okay, well, don't worry. And, of course, general elections coming up in November, so if you have not gotten your paperwork cleared away, please do so. That's about all I'm going to be able to deal with. October is like Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we'll be looking at that one, too. Again, where do you go from here? Do you get a chance to go home and relax, put your feet up?
Today?
Anytime?
No.
Okay.
Constantly moving.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to say, Mado, Mabo, Edget Scott, Gary Fife, Joe, Jeff Giddos. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Muskogee Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.